I'll never forget the way everyone looked at me that evening. It was my daughter's birthday, her first since she got married, and the entire family had gathered at their new house. The dining table sparkled with expensive gifts, designer boxes, and proud smiles. I stood there quietly, holding a small wrapped box that suddenly felt too small. When it was my turn to give my gift, my son-in-law Daniel smirked. "Ah, let's see what Mom-in-law brought," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. I smiled politely, ignoring the way his friend snickered. My daughter, Emma, looked uncomfortable but said nothing. I handed Daniel the box and said softly, "It's something meaningful, not flashy." He tore it open, and inside was a simple framed photo of my late husband and me, standing in front of our old family home. Beneath it, a small white envelope was taped to the back. Daniel laughed loudly. "A picture, that's sweet," he said mockingly. "Guess not everyone can afford real gifts these days." His words stung. The room went silent. Even Emma looked down, embarrassed. My hands trembled slightly, but I forced a smile. "It's okay," I said. "You'll understand someday." Daniel chuckled, waving the frame for everyone to see. A family photo and a mystery envelope. What's next? A poem. Everyone laughed again. Everyone except my lawyer, Mr. Harris, who stood quietly in the corner. He looked at me, his eyes serious, as if saying, "Are you sure you want to wait?" But I nodded. "No, not yet." Let him laugh. Because that cheap gift he mocked? That envelope he hadn't even opened yet. It held the deed to a $3 million house, the very house he was standing in. And in just a few minutes, Daniel was going to realize that the joke wasn't on me. It was on him. I was never a rich woman in my youth, but my husband, Richard, and I built a life that was comfortable and honest. We owned a small construction business that grew steadily over 35 years. By the time we retired, we had enough to live peacefully, help our children, and even invest in a few properties. Our daughter, Emma, was our pride. Sweet, polite, always eager to please. As a little girl, she'd run into my arms after school, showing me her drawings and saying, "One day, I'll buy you a big house, Mama." I used to laugh and tell her, "We already have everything we need." Our son, Michael, was the opposite, practical, grounded, and a bit too serious. He handled the business after Richard passed away from a heart attack 8 years ago. Michael became my pillar, visiting every Sunday without fail. Emma, though, she changed after Richard's death. She grew distant. I thought grief was shaping her silence until Daniel came into her life. Daniel was smooth, talking, always confident, always well-dressed. He sold luxury cars and seemed successful. But something about his smile never reached his eyes. Still, Emma was in love. She said he was ambitious, driven, and perfect. When they got engaged, I wanted to believe she'd found happiness. I gave them the down payment for their first home, a beautiful three-story house I had bought years ago as an investment. I put it under their names, thinking it would help them start life together. But soon after the wedding, the phone calls stopped. The Sunday visits stopped. Emma started making excuses. "We're busy, Mom," or "Daniel's got work." I told myself it was normal for newlyweds. Until one day, Michael came over and said quietly, "Mom, Daniel's been bragging about the house at his office. He said you gave it to them because you were too old to handle property papers anymore." My heart sank. Too old? I was many things but not a fool. That night, I sat alone with Richard's photo and whispered, "Seems your son-in-law's ambition comes with a price." When I pulled into their driveway the next morning, I noticed something right away. My name was missing from the small brass plate outside the house. It used to say the Montgomery residence. Now it simply read the Lewis family. I swallowed hard and rang the bell. Daniel opened the door, wearing that same polished smile. "Well, look who it is, the original homeowner herself," he said, half laughing. "I was in the neighborhood," I said calmly. "Thought I'd stop by." Emma appeared behind him, surprised. "Mom, you should have called." I didn't think I needed an appointment to visit my daughter. I said, trying to keep my tone light. They invited me in. The living room was immaculate, too immaculate. Every sign of my old decor was gone. The family photo I'd given them at their wedding wasn't on the mantel anymore. Daniel poured himself coffee and said, "You know, Emma and I were just talking about maybe remodeling the kitchen. Make it more modern, you know." I nodded. "That sounds nice. Then I added quietly, just be careful with the structure. The beams are original from when I built this house with your father. He raised an eyebrow. You built it. Oh, right, you mean you paid for it. The room fell silent. Emma looked down. I could hear the clock ticking. My chest tightened. Daniel, I said, you have a good life because this family worked for it. Don't forget that. He smiled again, but this time it was sharper. Don't worry, Mom. We'll take good care of your legacy. That word legacy sounded like a warning. As I left, I glanced back. Daniel stood by the window, arms crossed, watching me drive away. That same smile was still on his face, cold and victorious. When Mr. Harris, my family lawyer, told me what Daniel had asked, my stomach dropped. Transfer papers. I repeated, yes. Mr. Harris confirmed. He said he needed them for tax reasons. But something didn't feel right, so I told him you'd have to sign personally. I thanked him for calling and sat down, clutching my chest. My husband's old watch ticked on the table, a reminder of the time we had spent protecting what we'd earned. The next day, I called Emma. Sweetheart. I said, Daniel spoke to my lawyer. What's this about property documents? Her voice hesitated. Oh, Mom, he just thought it'd be easier if what? I interrupted softly, if the house was under his name. Silence. Finally, she said, you don't understand, Mom. He's just trying to plan for our future. It's not personal. I felt tears burn my eyes. Not personal. Emma, that house was built from your father's sweat. And you think giving it away isn't personal. She went quiet. Then she said something that cut me deeper than I expected. You always favored Michael. Maybe that's why you don't trust Daniel. The line went dead. I sat there for a long time, staring at the silent phone. I realized that Daniel's poison had already seeped into her heart, and maybe, just maybe, she was starting to believe him. 2 weeks passed after that awful phone call with Emma. I didn't reach out. I wanted to give her space, and honestly, I needed time to calm down myself. Then one afternoon, she called me. Her voice was cheerful, a little too cheerful. Mom, Daniel wants to invite you for dinner, she said. We thought it'd be nice to clear the air. I almost said no, but a mother's heart never hardens completely. So that Saturday, I dressed neatly, brought a small dessert I'd baked, and drove to their house again. When I arrived, Daniel greeted me with a wide grin. Glad you could make it, Mom, he said, a glass of wine already in his hand. We're just talking about the future. You know, planning ahead. The dining table was set beautifully, candles flickering. Emma looked happy to see me, or maybe just nervous. As we ate, Daniel leaned back and said casually, So, Mom, have you thought about what'll happen to your other properties when you get older? I set down my fork. What do you mean? He smiled. Well, you're not getting any younger, right? Maybe it's time to make things official, like transferring titles, writing wills, that sort of thing. Emma tried to change the subject, but Daniel kept pushing. Michael already has the business. It'd only be fair if Emma got the houses, don't you think? I looked at him, my expression calm though my heart pounded. Fairness isn't measured in money, Daniel. It's measured in love and responsibility. He smirked. Sure, but paper makes things clearer, doesn't it? The room went silent again. Even the ticking clock seemed louder than usual. I stood up slowly. Thank you for dinner, I said, gathering my purse. But I think I've heard enough about your plans for my property. Daniel laughed lightly, trying to brush it off. Hey, I'm just talking. No harm in planning ahead. I smiled faintly. Yes, I said, but be careful, not every plan ends the way you expect. Mr. Harris met me in his office the next morning. He was an older man, gray, haired but sharp as ever. He'd been our family lawyer for decades. He knew our history, our values, and most importantly, our children. He poured me tea and said, I take it the dinner didn't go well. I sighed. He's clever, I'll give him that, but not clever enough. Mr. Harris smiled faintly. So you want to go ahead with the plan? I nodded. Yes, let's transfer the title, but not to them. Not yet. I want to protect it until I know who deserves it. He opened a folder. We can move the property deed into a private trust. You'll remain the legal owner, but no one else will know unless you authorize it. Good, I said. And I want a clause added to my will, something Daniel will never see coming. Mr. Harris leaned forward. What kind of clause? I smiled. A conditional inheritance. Respect, gratitude, and honesty, they'll determine everything. If anyone fails that test, they get nothing. He nodded approvingly. A moral will, I like it. For the first time in weeks, I felt at peace. I wasn't going to confront Daniel, not yet. I let him think he was winning. Later that day, I stopped by Michael's office. He hugged me tightly. You okay, Mom? You look lighter. I smiled, just taking care of some unfinished business. He nodded knowingly. Michael had seen enough to understand that I was planning something, and that patience was my weapon. But deep inside, I knew Daniel wouldn't stop until he thought he had everything. And maybe, just maybe, I was going to let him believe exactly that. When I arrived at the housewarming, the place looked like a magazine cover. Fairy lights sparkled across the lawn, fancy cars lined the street. Daniel was at the center of it all, wearing a crisp suit and holding a glass of champagne like he owned the world. Mom, he called out when he saw me. Glad you made it. You're going to love what we've done with the place. Emma rushed over to hug me. Mom, doesn't it look beautiful? It does, I said softly, scanning the crowd. Almost everyone there was from Daniel's business circle, loud, rich, and shallow. As the evening went on, I noticed how Daniel bragged about the house to anyone who'd listen. 3 floors, marble flooring, custom kitchen. He said proudly, all paid for well, kind of a gift from the in-laws, you know. The way he said gift made my stomach twist. I stood there quietly, smiling when people greeted me, nodding politely as Daniel performed his charade. Inside, I was burning. At one point, I overheard him talking to a friend near the buffet table. Honestly, Daniel said, the old lady's sitting on millions. Once we get the papers done, this'll all be ours. Just a matter of time. His friend laughed. Smart man. Gotta secure your future. I clenched my fists, holding back tears. I'd never been so humiliated in my life, and in my own house, no less. But as I turned to leave, I saw Mr. Harris standing near the doorway, watching quietly. I hadn't invited him, which meant he'd come for a reason. He leaned close and whispered, The documents are ready. We can sign them anytime. I looked back at Daniel, still laughing, still bragging. Not yet. I said, let him dig his own grave first. 2 months passed since the housewarming party, 2 long, quiet months where I heard nothing from Emma. No calls, no visits, just silence. I spent my days tending to my garden, baking for the church, and pretending I didn't feel that constant ache in my chest. A mother can forgive many things, but indifference is the hardest. Then one evening, my phone buzzed. It was Emma. Mom. She said, her voice soft. I was thinking, maybe we could do dinner again. Just family this time. No guests, no friends. My first instinct was to say no. But something in her tone, a mixture of guilt and longing, made me pause. All right. I said, when? Next Saturday. She replied, Daniel wants to make it special. When I hung up, I sat there for a long time, thinking, Daniel wanted to make it special. That could mean anything. But if there's one thing I'd learned, it's that when a greedy man smiles too easily, he's hiding something. The following morning, I called Mr. Harris, bring the envelope. I told him. He knew what I meant. That entire week, I felt the air shift as if something big was about to happen. I baked a cake for Emma, just like I used to when she was little. I even picked out a simple gift, a framed photograph of our old home, the one Daniel had mocked before. But this time, taped behind it, was the deed, the official document showing ownership of the $3 million property. But here's the twist. The deed wasn't in Daniel and Emma's name anymore. It was in mine again, legally, publicly, and unchangeably. When I told Mr. Harris, he smiled. So, you're giving it back to them, but not really. Exactly. I said, let's see how much the gift means when they don't know what it's worth. The evening was warm, the kind that wraps around you with a false sense of peace. When I walked into the dining room, I immediately noticed something new: expensive paintings, new furniture, and a chandelier that clearly cost more than my first car. Daniel greeted me with that same charming smile. Well, if it isn't our favorite mother-in-law. I forced a polite grin. I hope I'm your only mother-in-law. He laughed, patting my shoulder. You know what I mean. Emma looked beautiful, but tired. There were faint dark circles under her eyes. She hugged me tightly and whispered, I'm so glad you came. I could hear the tremor in her voice, like she wanted to say something more but couldn't. As we sat down, Daniel raised his glass. To family and to a bright future. Everyone cheered. I raised my glass too, but inside, I wondered if he even understood what family really meant. Dinner went smoothly for the first half hour. Daniel bragged about a new business deal. Emma nodded politely, her fork barely touching her plate. Michael was there too, sitting quietly, watching. Then Daniel leaned forward. "So, Mom," he said, "I hear you've been meeting with lawyers lately. Should we be worried?" I smiled faintly. "Oh, nothing serious, just keeping things organized." He laughed. Good, good. You know, sometimes it's best to keep things simple. Like if you've got assets, just split them fairly. No secrets, no games." I met his eyes. "I agree completely." The table went quiet. The tension was thick enough to taste. Then Emma said softly, "Mom, we really appreciate everything you've done for us. We just want to be part of your future too." I looked at her, my daughter, my baby girl, and I saw not greed, but fear. She was trapped in Daniel's world, and I knew it. "I know," I said, "and that's why I brought something for you both." Daniel's eyes lit up instantly. "A gift you shouldn't have, Mom." I smiled. "Oh, but I wanted to." Emma smiled when she saw the box. Daniel, on the other hand, grinned like a child on Christmas morning. He grabbed it before she could even touch it. "Let's see what we have here," he said, shaking it playfully. "It's light. Probably something sentimental, right?" I stayed quiet, sipping my water. He unwrapped it quickly, revealing the framed photo, the same one I had given before, of my late husband and me standing in front of the old house. Daniel stared at it, then laughed loudly. "A photo, again. Guess we're keeping up the tradition of humble gifts," he said, smirking. His words cut through me like a knife, but I didn't flinch. Emma looked mortified. Daniel, stop. But he didn't. "Oh, come on, babe. It's cute. Maybe next year we'll get a matching one for the guest room." Laughter rippled from one of his friends at the table. I smiled calmly and said, "You might want to check the back." He frowned, flipping the frame over. The small white envelope was there, taped neatly. "What's this, a secret letter?" He joked, something like that. I said softly, "Why don't you open it?" Daniel tore it open dramatically, still grinning. But the moment his eyes fell on the first line, his face changed. The color drained from it. He froze, staring at the paper. Emma leaned in. "What is it?" He didn't answer. His lips parted, but no sound came out. Michael reached over, took the paper, and read aloud, "Official Property Deed 2, 147 Maple Drive, valued at $3,075,000." The room went completely silent. Daniel blinked, as if trying to process what he just heard. "You mean, this house?" I nodded slowly. "Yes, Daniel, the one you're standing in." He swallowed hard. "But it's in your name now." I smiled gently. "That's right, and it will stay that way until I decide who truly deserves it." Daniel's question hung in the air, so this was all a test. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator in that silence. No one dared to speak. I folded my hands in my lap, keeping my voice calm. "I don't believe in tests, Daniel. I believe in truth, and tonight you showed yours." He stood up abruptly, the chair scraping across the floor. "You think this is funny? You embarrassed me in front of everyone." Emma tried to touch his arm. "Daniel, please," but he pulled away. "No, she's been playing games since day one. Acting innocent while keeping everything to herself. This house should be ours, Emma. Ours." I looked him straight in the eye. "It was yours once, but when you started treating me like a burden instead of family, I decided to take it back." Daniel laughed bitterly. "Unbelievable. You just can't stand that your little girl grew up and found someone successful." I tilted my head slightly. "Is that what you call yourself?" He glared at me, his voice rising. "You're just jealous, aren't you, because you're old alone and scared that someone else might have control for once." Michael shot up from his seat. "Watch your mouth." Daniel turned toward him. "Oh, here we go, the favorite son, the golden boy. Of course she'd defend you." Emma buried her face in her hands, tears slipping through her fingers. "Stop it, both of you." I stood slowly, my heart pounding but my voice steady. "Enough, Daniel. Sit down." He froze, eyes blazing, but something in my tone firm, unshaken, made him obey. I took the envelope back from the table. "That document you're holding, it's not just the deed. It's proof that you've been lying to my daughter, to this family and to yourself?" He sneered. "Oh, and I suppose you've got proof of that too." I nodded once. "Actually, yes." Daniel looked stunned as Mr. Harris entered the room. The old lawyer gave a polite nod. "Good evening, everyone. I hope I'm not interrupting." I gestured for him to come in. "You're right on time." He opened his briefcase and set it on the table. "Mrs. Montgomery asked me to bring some documents. I believe they'll clear a few misunderstandings." Daniel scoffed. "Misunderstandings? The only misunderstanding here is that she thinks she can control our lives." Mr. Harris didn't flinch. He pulled out a set of papers. "Actually, Mr. Lewis, you've already done that yourself." He handed one sheet to Emma. "Mrs. Lewis, this is the record of a bank loan Daniel took against this very property without your mother's consent." Emma's face went pale. "What?" Daniel's eyes darted. "That's not what it looks like, Mr. Harris continued. "It is exactly what it looks like." He used forged authorization documents. "The bank contacted me last week for verification. Fortunately, they didn't process it because your mother's name was still on the deed." Emma looked at Daniel, horrified. "You lied to me. You said we were just refinancing." Daniel's composure cracked. "Emma, I did it for us, to start my own business. Once it worked, we'd have more than enough to pay it back, by stealing from my family." I interrupted quietly. His voice broke. "I'm not a thief." Mr. Harris sighed. "Then you should have thought twice before signing forged papers. That's a criminal offense." Daniel's face drained of color. "You can't prove that." "Oh, we can," I said, "because I recorded the bank's call." I turned to Emma, who was shaking. "I wanted you to see this for yourself, sweetheart. Not to hurt you, but to open your eyes." She stared at Daniel, her voice trembling. "All this time, you said my mother didn't trust us, but it was you who betrayed her." Daniel reached for her, desperate. "Emma, please, She stepped back. "Don't touch me." Mr. Harris took out a sealed document. "This," he said, "is Mrs. Montgomery's official will recently updated." Daniel groaned, rubbing his temples. "Oh, for God's sake." Mr. Harris ignored him and continued. "It states that her properties, including the house, the business shares, and her savings, will be divided based on one simple rule: respect and honesty. Anyone found guilty of deceit, manipulation, or disrespect forfeits their inheritance completely." He turned to Daniel. "That includes son-in-laws." Daniel slammed his hand on the table. "You can't do this. It's not fair." I looked him squarely in the eye. Fair is what you get when you give respect. You gave me none." He laughed bitterly. "You think this changes anything? Emma's my wife. What's hers is mine." Emma straightened up, her eyes suddenly clear. "Not anymore, Daniel. I'm filing for separation." He turned to her, stunned. "You can't be serious if I am," she said, voice firm. "You used me. You used my family. I'm done." Daniel's face twisted in rage. "You're all insane. You'll regret this." Mr. Harris calmly placed another document on the table. "Actually, Mr. Lewis, the only one facing regret might be you. The bank already opened an investigation into the forgery. I've shared copies of everything." Daniel stared at him, speechless. Then he grabbed his coat and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the lights flickered. Silence filled the room once again. Emma collapsed into tears. Michael rushed to her side. "You're safe now," he whispered. I sat down slowly, my heart heavy but strangely at peace. Mr. Harris smiled gently. "I'd say that went about as planned." I exhaled. "Yes." I said softly. The truth finally came home. The next morning the house felt different, still but not empty, quiet yet not sad. It was the kind of silence that follows a storm when everything's broken, but you can finally see the sky again. I stood by the kitchen window, watching the sunlight pour across the garden. The same garden where Emma had played as a child. The same one where I used to sit with her father, talking about our dreams for this family. Now it was just me and the echoes of what was lost. Emma came downstairs slowly, her eyes puffy from crying. She looked so fragile, but there was a calmness in her that hadn't been there before. "Morning, sweetheart," I said softly. She gave a faint smile. "Morning, Mom." We sat together at the kitchen table. the same place where everything had fallen apart the night before. For a while, neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, "I don't even know where to start." "Start with honesty." I replied, "It's the one thing Daniel never gave you." Her lips trembled. "I feel like such a fool. I defended him against everyone, even you." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Love makes us blind sometimes, Emma, but that doesn't make you a fool. It makes you human." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I just wanted a family of my own. I thought he loved me." I squeezed her hand. "Maybe he did in his own selfish way. But love without respect isn't love, darling. It's control." She nodded slowly, wiping her tears. "I'm going to fix this," she whispered, "for Dad, for you, for me." That's when I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time, strength in her eyes. The kind her father used to have. We sat there a while longer, sipping tea, watching the sunlight crawl across the floor. It felt like healing had finally begun. At the door stood a police officer. He nodded politely. "Good morning, ma'am. We're here regarding a Mr. Daniel Lewis." Emma froze beside me. What happened? The officer took off his cap. He turned himself in last night. Said he wanted to come clean about the forged documents. I blinked, surprised. He confessed, "Yes, ma'am. We'll still need to verify everything," but he gave a full statement. He mentioned you said you were right to stop him. Emma's lips parted slightly. She didn't say anything, just looked away, tears brimming again. After they left, she stood at the window, whispering, "He's not all bad, Mom. Just lost." I nodded slowly. Sometimes people lose themselves chasing what they think they deserve, and by the time they realize what really matters, it's too late. She turned to me, voice breaking. "Do you think he can change?" "I think everyone can," I said, "but not everyone will." A week later, Mr. Harris returned with the final legal paperwork. Everything had been transferred properly. The bank dropped its inquiry, and the house was safe for good. I signed the last page and handed it back with a sigh of relief. "It's done." Mr. Harris smiled. "You did the right thing, Mrs. Montgomery. It takes courage to protect your family even from themselves." After he left, Emma and I stood in the doorway, watching the sun dip below the trees. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. "Regret?" I smiled faintly. "Only that I didn't open my eyes sooner. I spent so long trying to keep the family together. I forgot that sometimes you have to let people fall apart to see who they truly are." That night, we cooked together for the first time in months. No fancy meal, no guests, just us. And when we laughed, genuinely laughed, it felt like something old and sacred had come home again. A week later, I visited my husband's grave. The wind was gentle, the air smelled of jasmine, and the morning light bathed the cemetery in gold. I placed a single white rose on the stone and whispered, "It's done, love. I kept your promise." For a moment, I could almost hear his voice, calm, kind, and steady as always. "You did good, Mary. You did good." I smiled through the tears. They tried to take everything, but they forgot one thing: I'm still standing. As I sat there, I thought about everything that had happened, the greed, the lies, the heartbreak. And I realized something simple, something I wish I'd known sooner. You can build a house out of bricks, but you can only build a home out of honesty. Daniel lost his chance not because he was poor, but because he was hollow inside, chasing wealth instead of worth. Emma learned that love doesn't mean silence, it means standing beside someone, not beneath them. And me, I learned that protecting what you've built doesn't make you cruel. It makes you wise. When I got home that evening, Emma was on the porch with Michael and his kids. They waved at me, smiling. For the first time in years, the house felt alive again. The laughter, the light, the peace. I stood there, my heart full, whispering to myself, let them say what they want about me. But when I'm gone, I want them to remember not the money I left behind, but the strength I refused to give up. I turned to close the door and smiled. "Family isn't about blood or inheritance," I said softly. "It's about who stands with you when the world turns its back." And that, dear listener, is the story of how I almost lost everything and found myself instead.